Thank you for class on time. I see our presenter is already in the meeting. Esther, you're most welcome. Mary Ndegwa, karibu sana. Isaac Warambo, how are you this evening? If you're able to speak, Isaac.
Yes, I can talk. Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
No, I cannot hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
I'm not sure. Is there someone hearing Isaac? Try talking again.
Hello, can you hear me?
I'm hearing you from very, very far.
Good evening. Hello, can you hear me now?
You're sounding like you're from very far.
Maybe it's my network.
Hello, can someone else speak? I see if it's my computer with a problem.
Hey, Cody, how are you? This is Saira. I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, Saira, good to hear from you after such a long time. How are you? It's
Good,
okay.
thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good to hear from you after such a long time. I think it was my computer with a volume problem.
No, I can hear you loud and clear, and the gentleman also started the speaker. I could hear him, and then I don't know where, maybe he's checking the reception or something. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're welcome this evening. I see we have a good number. So this evening, we have our speaker from Bluemount. I think I will do her injustice if I start introducing her. I want her to introduce herself. Today, we are going to talk about accommodations. Welcome to our online session. If you're joining us for the first time, just know that you can join us another time again. We meet every Tuesday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. A presenter presents and then we are able to ask questions. So you're most welcome. I would like to invite Esther to dive into the topic right away. But Esther, please kindly introduce yourself. And if you can put on your video, it helps connecting with your audience. Esther, most welcome. The floor is yours. Esther? Esther, I'm not sure what's happening.
You're
Esther,
calling
you
me.
here? Sorry?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, no, you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. It's actually my computer, I think, which had a problem.
Yes.
Esther, I'm not sure what's happening to Esther. Let me call her. Yes, Esther, I can see you now. You're welcome. You could start by introducing yourself. Please unmute and start. Esther, I can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Esther, I can't hear you. Unmute and start. Okay, let me do it. Okay. Okay, now you can start. Esther, your volume, I can't hear you. Is anybody hearing Esther?
Meeting. Nobody can hear her. Even I can't hear her.
Esther, are you hearing us? We can't hear you.
We can't hear Esther.
Let me call him. Esther. Yeah. We are sorry for that. Esther is not able to be heard. So what I've done, I've advised her to log out and log in back. So let's see if that will help. In the meantime, if we have any tech-savvy individual in our class today, please you can jump in and assist Esther. And I think I've just advised her to log out and then come back. I'm sorry for that. Let's just be a bit patient as Esther is joining us back, please. I'm sorry for that. But if we have a tech-savvy person in our midst, you could help us figure out what can be done better. But I believe when she comes back, she might be.
Yeah, I've logged in with my phone, so you will help me with the slides. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Let me put on the slides for you.
Yes, but do you have the meeting ID so that I can? Okay, yeah, that's fine. Don't bother about that. Put for me the slides.
Okay, I'm putting for you the slides, Esther. I'm sorry for that inconvenience.
Yes, my apologies too.
I'm putting on the slides for you quickly.
All right, thank you.
In the meantime, Esther, can you start introducing yourself, please?
Sure. So good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is, thank you. My name is Esther Mushiri Wamae. I am a special needs educator. I'm also a consultant in the space of special needs education. I am also an assessor. I conduct psychometric assessments for learners with learning or special educational needs. I'm also an access arrangement assessor for the learners who need support during exams. And I am the founder and CEO of Bloom Dyslexia Center. That is the consultancy firm that I work under. But I also have another outfit called Bloom Out. And this is a social enterprise that supports young neurodivergent individuals with skilling for economic empowerment. So we offer various courses, we train them, and once they are proficient in the skills, we either absorb them in our organization or we find them other employers that will employ them, or we help them start their small businesses. Thank you very much. I am very glad to be here today. It's an honor to be your facilitator this evening, and I look forward to a very interactive session, and I believe that we shall all learn together. Thank you very much. And I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Can you see my screen?
But not the slides. I'm only seeing your face.
Aha, the screen is not being seen. Oh, today we have issues.
Oh.
Let me start again sharing.
All right.
Can anyone see my screen now?
Yes, it's visible now.
Thank you. Let me try to see where I can put present so that it's full. You
Okay.
can start, Esther.
All right. So thank you very much all for attending. So today's session is on classroom accommodations for learners with dyslexia. And this is a session for parents, for teachers, for educators, and anybody who has special interest in dyslexia and other learning challenges. So without further ado, because our time is much spent, allow me to go straight into our presentation. And so for this training, I believe for all of us who have attended, we have expectations for this training. Unfortunately, we may not be able to discuss. This is how I usually start my presentation. So if this was an in-person training, would have at least had 3 or 4 people sampling the expectations and hopefully believing that those expectations represent everybody who is here. But from the expectations, I believe the learning outcomes that I have for this training will represent our expectations. And so for today, we are going to look at inclusion and inclusive education. We are going to look at the international legal frameworks that underlie inclusive education. And you're going to look at the barriers that hinder inclusive education and explain suggested ways to overcome them. We're also going to look at the benefits of inclusive education. And finally, we are going to understand how to accommodate and remediate learners with dyslexia. So why the first part of this presentation is key, as much as I know today I'm supposed to be talking about accommodations. And actually, before even we go into this, to the accommodations, we are also going to look at dyslexia. What is it? What is it that we are accommodating? Because as much as I know maybe most of us already know what dyslexia is and what is not, then we have to look at the challenges that come with dyslexia that need accommodation. So we shall be looking at all that. And finally, we'll end with the accommodations. And hopefully, I'm not sure if time will allow us to look at remediation, but if it does, we will just touch on it briefly, and hopefully we'll we'll dive deep next time if presented with an opportunity. So since today we are looking at accommodations for learners with dyslexia, let's just look at what we know about dyslexia. And I would want, maybe we look at the following statements and ask ourselves, are they true or are they false? So the first one is people with dyslexia always have difficulty with literacy. So the question is that true or is it false? So since we have the chat box, feel free to put your answer. You can just call that 1 and put your answer there, whether you think it's true or false. I will come back to the chat box and see what people think. Then dyslexia can cause problems with numeracy. Is that statement true or false? But I think maybe for the benefit of learning, let's just look at each statement and either qualify it or disqualify it. So for the first one, people with dyslexia always have difficulty with literacy. That may not necessarily true, as much as, of course, dyslexia affects literacy skills. So it's not always, because when they are remediated, then somehow the difficulty may go or may reduce. Of course, we may not alleviate the difficulties completely, but with very good interventions through remediations and accommodations, we can significantly alleviate some of the difficulties. So dyslexia can cause problems with numeracy, yes, and this is because of some of the challenges that we're going to look at, but also important to note that dyslexia do occur something we call comorbidity with a condition called dyscalculia, which is a learning difficulties affecting numeracy. Then dyslexia means someone is not clever. This is a big false, because we know dyslexia does not affect intelligence. If anything, people with dyslexia have between average to above average intelligence. So that is not true. But sometimes what happens is that dyslexia may mask intelligence. We actually have a saying where we say dyslexia may mask intelligence, and also intelligence may mask dyslexia. But clearly, people with dyslexia are quite clever, quite talented and gifted, and have quite a number of strengths, and therefore that statement is not true. Then you can tell someone has dyslexia by looking at them. This is false, because dyslexia is an invisible learning challenge or learning difficulty, and it's brain-based, it's neurological. It's the makeup of the brain, and therefore you cannot look at somebody. There's no physical manifestation or presentation of dyslexia. Then sometimes a person with dyslexia can be forgetful. Yes, this is very true, because dyslexia also comes with memory issues. So most dyslexics have challenges with recall or retrieving information, and especially information that is worded or that is in written language. And because we say dyslexics think in pictures more than they think in words. So the visual memory, they have photographic memory for visual things, but for words, for anything they have read, they are likely to forget quite quickly. Then finally, a person with dyslexia can be very creative, inventive. Yes, this is very true. I've already said that dyslexics are superly gifted, and they have quite a number of strengths in the area of creativity, invention, innovation, and design, sports, and all those areas. And we look at that when we look at the brain basics of people with dyslexia. So next slide, please. Very good. So allow me, even if you already know what dyslexia is, to just quickly look at what is dyslexia. And it's important to note that dyslexia is not actually an English word. It has its origin from the Greek language. And so it's a Greek word that means difficulty with words. And that's why I have said, when it comes to memory recall, they struggle to remember or to think in words, and they are more visual. and because dyslexia means difficulty with words. And we are saying it has been around for 100 of years. Because I am a dyslexia specialist, I get asked, it looks like this is an emerging issue that maybe dyslexia just happened the other day. No, what happened the other day is just is the awareness that has been heightened. Otherwise, dyslexia has been around for quite some time. In fact, initially, many years ago, when the term dyslexia had not been coined, they used to call it word blindness, and it has its trace even in the many over 1,000 years ago. But with time and innovation, so the word dyslexia was coined, and it's formed from two parts: the dys, which means lack of ability, and that's why you'll find that we have quite a number of words that start with dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. So that part dys, which is a prefix, dys means lack of ability, and then lexia, which is what we would call the suffix, means language. So when you join the two, it means that people with dyslexia lack ability with language. And here, mostly we are talking about the written language, or the code, the written language that needs to be read. That's the language that dyslexics struggle with. Otherwise, when it comes to the oral language, most dyslexics are very good. They are quite eloquent. They are very articulate, although they may have challenges with maybe sometimes retrieving words from their brains. Most dyslexics will tell me, I have the word in the brain, but it's refusing to come out of the mouth. But that's not really a significant challenge. Otherwise, most of them are quite eloquent, unless there's comorbidity with other speech and language issues that may come with dyslexia. But dyslexia on its own, the oral language skills are not significantly affected. So therefore, we are saying dyslexia means lack of ability with language. So I don't know at what point we'll allow questions, but if you have any question as we go along, please feel free to share it on the chat. I'll be looking at any question or any clarification that you need as we proceed. So we have also we have what we call secondary consequence, and this is the problems in reading comprehension. Dyslexia also causes reduced reading experience that impedes growth of vocabulary and background knowledge. And this is as a result of significant challenges, and we are going to look at the symptoms. Significant languages learning to read. So their reading is quite slow. It is labored, and therefore they invest more on trying to decode or blend words at the expense of comprehension. So this is some of the secondary consequences of dyslexia. So there are many myths and facts about dyslexia. And so I want us to look at some of those myths, or what dyslexia is not. And dyslexia is not reading or writing letters or words backwards. Most people say that dyslexics read backwards. Well, I have seen a tendency of that happening, but it's not really a characteristic of dyslexia. So as much as their reading is affected, rarely will they read backward, but maybe in some few instances, you may find a learner who is trying to read backward, although it's not a common occurrence. So dyslexia is not caused by poor eyesight. It is not a vision problem, and it's not even a vision processing problem or a hearing problem. So if one's reading challenge or learning challenge is as a result of poor eyesight, or what we call visual processing or audio processing problem, then that is not dyslexia. Then it is not an intellectual or developmental disability. There's this confusion that persons with dyslexia have intellectual disability. that is not the case, because we know that intellectual disability is characterized by very low IQ. We talk of an IQ of 60 and below, or 59 and below. So for anyone with an IQ of 59 and below, we say that they have an intellectual disability. But for dyslexics, we've just said that they have between average and above average IQ, as much as they have struggles with reading, writing, spelling, comprehension. But if an IQ test is ran on them and it measures 60 and above, then that person does not have an intellectual disability, and it's dyslexia. Then it's not a lack of education opportunity. We know there are people who may not have the privilege to go to school, so, and therefore they may not acquire literacy skills. So you cannot say that that person is dyslexic. I always give an example when I'm explaining this point, that maybe for our grandmothers or our grandparents or great-grandparents who never had an opportunity to go to school and therefore did not have an education opportunity, then we cannot describe them as dyslexics. No. Then finally, it's not a lack of motivation or laziness, but unfortunately, many dyslexic people, many dyslexic learners are always labeled lazy, that they are not motivated, they have no self-drive, and all those derogatory terms that are usually meted on them, and that is not the case. So those are some of the myths that I wanted us to dispel today about dyslexia. There are many, many others. And oh yes, I skipped one, and it's not a degenerative disease. So dyslexia is not a disease. It does not require any medication. It does not require any treatment. So it is just a brain-based condition. We say it's neurological in nature. So it is in the makeup of the brain. The structure and the function of a dyslexic brain is what is different. So we have what you call the neurological differences or brain differences. So you'll find that for the dyslexic brain, it is a bit different from the other typical brain. So common symptoms that are related to dyslexia. So we've already said that they have difficulty learning to read, and their reading is slow, it is labored, and it has a choppy cadency. So when you talk of choppy cadency, if you've observed most dyslexic children or people read, they will read one word after one word. So it's like we said, it's like they chop the sentences into words. That's why we are calling it choppy cadency. And of course, that causes very slow reading. They often ignore punctuations, and therefore their reading is not fluent, it is not accurate, and as a result, it causes poor reading comprehension, because as I had said, they invest more on trying to figure out how to read the word, how to decode the word at the expense of comprehension, because by the time they're done with a sentence, they'll even have forgotten the first part of that sentence, and therefore definitely they are not able to recall what they had learned. So dyslexia also affects spelling, and here we are saying spelling is far worse than reading. So they'll often misspell sight words, and these are words that are not phonetic, or we don't spell them the way we pronounce them. And most dyslexics tend to spell sight words the way they are spelled, and therefore they end up misspelling them. So when it comes to their writing, just like the reading, is quite slow. It's also labored, and it's a very non-automatic call. So they actually don't like reading, and writing, just like they don't enjoy reading. And you'll find that when you ask the learner with dyslexia to write, so they'll either write a very short paragraph, and especially what you call the free writing or creative writing, and most of it may just be repetitive, that you'll find them, they are repeating the same thing because they have very limited vocabulary, and also what we call their syntax or sentence structure is affected. So the grammar, the spelling rules, all that is affected, and therefore they are not able to write coherent piece of writing, or even being able to put their thoughts into writing. But if you ask them to produce the same orally, verbally. They are very, very articulate when it comes to that. So dyslexia also comes with directionality issues. So the right and left. So one typical characteristic of this is the confusion of the B and the D. So why dyslexics will confuse the B, the D, the P, and the Q is because some face the right, and as others face left. And because they have this confusion of right, left, so they are not able to differentiate the look-alike letters, and you'll find that they will reverse those letters. So they also have the up and down directionality issue, and that also causes confusion of look-alike letters like the small n and the small u. One faces up, the other one faces down, so there's always that confusion. We also have the W, the small w, and the small m, or either capitals because they have the same letter, same formation. So you'll find because of that directionality issue of up and down, it causes confusion. And again, even similarly to that, when it comes to reading, look-alike words like so and was, so they tend to confuse that. And that's why most people will think that dyslexics read from the back, because if they're confusing the word so and was, so the reading backward is was. So that's where the tendency of looking like they're reading backwards is, but that has got to do with something we call orthographic, how words are spelled, and because of that confusion, they confuse the look-alike words. Next slide. So having looked at, and I'm just scratching the surface, I'm not going in depth into the symptoms. We have more symptoms, but because today's focus is on accommodation, I just, I'm taking you through quickly at the symptoms so that we know what are we remediating, what are we accommodating. So when we look at the interventions that we give to people or learners with dyslexia, and let me use the learners because we're in the context of maybe a school or classroom. So when you talk about interventions, so we either look at accommodations or remediation. So what's the difference? So when it comes to accommodation, we are saying these are the tools or modifications to assist the student to be successful in the classroom or work work environment for the adults. So what tools do we give learners with dyslexia so that they can be successful in the class? So some of these tools could be assistive technology, speech to text, text to speech, extra time, differentiating the curriculum, and all that. You're going to look at that in depth, or just making modifications. So for example, you could have a learner with dyslexia, if they have concentration or attention issues, what's the sitting position in the class? So it helps to bring them to the front near the teacher, on close proximity to the teacher. Or we may have to modify how we are giving the homework. So instead of asking them to go and write 20 sentences, we can give them worksheets where the questions are already there, and all they shall be doing is filling in the answers. Or instead of asking them to copy notes, to go and study the notes, and we know that's an area that they significantly struggle with, we could give them handouts where we have done short notes, and they will be able to read. Or we can present work, the work we are giving visually. We say they think in pictures, so they are visual learners. So instead of giving long notes that are full of words that are text heavy, how about converting that same content into visual content? Maybe you could present a video, you could present the same information graphically, pictorial, and help them understand more what you're trying to teach. So that's what accommodation is all about. When it comes to remediation, here now we are talking about we are being more academic. So we say that they struggle with reading, and if reading is affected, comprehension is affected, all the language skills or literacy skills are affected. So how do we remediate on that? So we are saying then there's need to use direct and explicit instructions to assist the students with learning the phonemes, because we know for reading, it all starts with the alphabet and what we call the sounds or the phonics. So it would be important that any reading program is based on what we call the science of reading or structured literacy. And this is where remediation comes. I doubt we will have time to go through this, because the science of reading is another whole area that may take us another hour or more. But it's good to know that there is a difference between remediation and accommodation. And when you're talking about remediation, so we are talking about structured literacy. How do we teach learners to read? Are we using evidence-based reading programs, or what we call research-based reading programs that are direct, that are explicit, that are structured, that are systematic, they are sequential, and multisensory, where we are applying all sensories, the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, the tactile, to help our learners learn to read. So that may be a topic for another day that I would be very happy to take you through. So when you're talking about accommodations in the classroom, then all we are emphasizing is inclusive education, because we are looking at a learner who is learning within a mainstream setup in a regular class. And we have to make some accommodations, what we've talked about, providing tools or making modifications or what we call reasonable adjustments, so that this learner, so that we can level the playing ground. Actually, accommodations, it's just about leveling the playing ground, so that we do not disadvantage this learner as compared to the other typically learners in the same class. So when you're talking about in accommodation, we are practicing inclusive education. And here we are saying inclusive education takes mainstreaming a step further. So it advocates for a fully inclusive classroom where all learners are educated together. So all learners have to be we are encouraging that the learners are educated together in a supportive and accommodating environment. We've looked at what accommodations are. And we are saying in an inclusive classroom, students with dyslexia are not just physically present. So we are not just integrating them. We are making sure that they are actively participating in the learning process. And this is through the help of individualized education program. This is another accommodation, that we have to individualize the learning program of a learner with dyslexia, so that we provide for individualization and differentiation. If they're not at par with their peers, then how are we differentiating their work? This can only be provided for in the IEP, because this helps us, it's a plan that we are able to design, implement, and monitor how the student is progressing. And of course, it also helps that if this also comes with support from special education teachers, because most regularly trained teachers may not have the capacity and the tools to be able to help children with dyslexia. And here we are saying the focus is providing appropriate accommodations and modifications, and I've already mentioned some of them, to ensure that every student can access the curriculum and succeed academically. So we are saying it is leveling the playing ground, just like we have blind students being given access to Braille, deaf students have sign language interpretation. So for dyslexics, what is that helps them to level the playing ground and they are not disadvantaged from their peers? So in an inclusive classroom, the special education teachers will collaborate with their general education counterparts. So we are not just leaving it to the special education teachers. So the regular counterparts who are the ones who are teaching the main subjects have to create an environment where diversity is celebrated and every student's potential is recognized and nurtured. So very important. So next slide, please. So when we create an inclusive environment, we are practicing something we call least restrictive environment, or we are creating what we call least restrictive environment. And what we are saying is that inclusive classrooms where accommodation is happening open the door for a least restrictive environment. And it emphasizes the importance of enabling special education students to learn. They will learn, they will socialize with their peers in a regular classroom setting, but of course, where they are receiving necessary support that helps them meet their unique learning needs. So in a least restrictive environment, it ensures that students with special educational needs are educated alongside their typical peers. So we are not excluding them. We are not secluding them. They are all in the same class. But for them to thrive just like their typical peers, our classes have to be inclusive. We have to provide the accommodation and the modifications they need to thrive. And this has to be done to the maximum extent possible, with support and accommodations provided to facilitate their success. So that's what we mean by least restrictive environment. Next slide, please. Yes, so we have that diagram or infograph that explains what a least restrictive environment looks at. And on the extreme right, we have those circles, and the circles have red and green dots, and those represent learners. So for the green dot, those are children who are typically developing, children who have no special educational needs. And the red dots are children with special needs. So at the very bottom of that pyramid, as you can see, the pyramid has layers. So at the bottom layer of that pyramid is general education stroke inclusion. And this is where we are saying all learners with or without special educational needs are educated together in the same classroom. But for those with special educational needs, they are given support in terms of accommodations, modifications, and remediation. So that's the most ideal way of teaching learners. And that is what we advocate. So for those of us who are advocates of inclusion and especially inclusive education, that is what we push for. So as we go up the pyramid, we have the in-class support resource. In most cases, this is where children are pulled out and taken to the resource room. So that tells you that in the general education classroom, they're not getting enough support. So where we have that gray arrow and has the bolder big letters from self-contained, resource center replacement, in-class support, and resource. So that is more of mainstreaming, that yes, the learners are together, but there's some segregation that is taking place, that those with special needs are being supported separately. And that's why you see they're not mixed, unlike the circle at the bottom, where the reds and the greens are together. So you can see here, there's the reds, there's a circle with the reds, and the bigger circle with the greens. So the bigger circle is the classroom, and those that are typically developing are being taught separately. Or even if they're within the same class, those that have special educational needs maybe are at a corner or in the center, but you can see they are not learning together. So what is happening there is mainstreaming. So they are just merely physically present or integrated, but they are not meaningfully being included in everything that the other typically developing children are doing. So where we have the yellow arrow, now that is complete seclusion. So you can see the green dots, that's a class on its own, and the red dots, that's a class on its own. So typically, like in our country here, what happens is that we have the schools, then we have what we call special units. So within a certain primary school, we have the classes for the typically developing children. Then we have separate classes for those with special needs. And that is seclusion, and it's not something that we are advocating for. And even finally, the last dot, where you see again the green dots, the children are again separate, and the red dots, they are separate. So that is complete seclusion. So they are actually not even within the same school compound. So they have been shunned away, and they're in their own maybe schools, different premises, and they are learning separately from their typically developing peers. So looking at that pyramid, we go back to the bottom of the pyramid, and that's what we advocate for. So that next. So the next slide has just explained what I have just explained. And so we look at the 4 models of how children learn. So we have, maybe if you look at, we start with the right side, the right bottom, we have the inclusion. So where all children, both typically developing children and those with special needs, they are all in the same class. I have explained that. So we call that inclusion. But it's inclusion if they are getting support. We are not just merely placing them in those classes and saying we are supporting children with special needs. There has to be evidence. We have to find IEPs in that class. We have to find assistive technology in that class. We have to find special needs education teachers working together with the regular teachers in that class. For those children maybe who need therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, or any type of therapy, it is also being provided for within that inclusive system. Then we have segregation. So you can see different classes. Maybe it could be the same compound, school compound, but the different children have different separate classes. Then we have integration. And most schools think that integration is a positive thing. I hear a lot that we are an integrated school. Teachers and educators priding themselves that they are integrated school. That's not really a positive thing, because you can see as much as they're in the same classroom, they're at a corner, maybe with their special education teacher, learning different things from the blue ones who are typically developing. They have maybe the regular teacher, the subject teacher, and they are learning different things. So as much as they're in the same room, there's still no inclusion happening. And now the last one is the one I say, the exclusion. Those ones are not even in the same compound. They are not even within the precinct of that school. So the blue is a different school, and what is outside the circle or that circumference is children with special needs who are learning in a different space, maybe even quite far from the main school. So that is total exclusion. So next. So I want us to look at the legal frameworks that underpin inclusive education. In my country, I usually have first, before we go to the international legal framework, I have a slide for the local legal framework, or what we call the national legal framework. But since these are 2 separate countries and I had not done enough homework to know the legal framework for Tanzania, please allow me to just look at the international legal framework. But for our Tanzania brothers and sisters, I'm giving you homework to go and look at what are your national legal frameworks that underpin inclusive education. So the first one is the UN Declaration on Human Rights. So it has provisions for children or persons with disabilities and how they should be educated. So the next one is the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and this is specifically on the rights of children, and it also has provision for inclusive education for children with special educational needs and disabilities. So the other legal framework is a framework we call the Salamanca Statement and Framework for Action on Special Needs Education, 1994. And finally, and this is not exhaustive, I just sampled a few, so we still have many, many others that I have not listed, and so maybe you can also check them out. And so this is the main one, the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, or what we call the UNCRPD. We call this the Bible of disability inclusion, and it outlines all the rights, the human rights that persons with disabilities are entitled to. So right to education, right to health, right to a family, right to all those social welfare. So, and it's specifically very elaborate on the rights of education. So that's also another instrument that you can familiarize with. And what happens is that why it is important, maybe you're asking, why is this relevant? Why is it important for this training? Is because while we do what we do, whether we are teachers, it's good to know what the law says about educating children with special educational needs, and what is our obligation, what is our imperative as educators. Because if you're not doing it, then you are infringing on the rights of those children, and anybody, whether it's a parent or human rights activist, they would actually even litigate if schools or educational institutions are not giving the right education. So we say ignorance to the law is no defense. So it's good to know what the law says about, and even if we have parents here, it's good to know what protects your child who has special education when it comes to the education. When a school says we are providing this, are they doing it? And if they're not doing it, what recourse or redress do you have as a parent? And you can actually invoke some of these legal instruments, and that can help you as you advocate, not necessarily maybe to be acrimonious with the school, but just to know your right. What's the right of your child? Because remember, in most cases, you as a parent, you're the advocate of your child, because they may not be able to self-advocate and know what is it that the schools ought to do as far as the provisions of the law are concerned. So next slide. So we are looking at the barriers, because as much as we are advocating for inclusive education and saying that that's the most ideal, we know that it's not that easy. It doesn't come easily. And we have all these barriers, attitudinal barriers, barriers with the limitations to resources. And so what are some of these barriers? So the first one is we have a negative attitude. So attitudinal barriers, and in most cases, this attitude, if it's in the school context, it might just stem from above, right, from maybe the management, cascading down to the teachers, and even to other to the typically developing children, where you find that they have a negative attitude towards children with learning disabilities or the special educational needs and disabilities, and therefore that hinders inclusive education. So why trainings like this are important is because when we give people the right information, when we create awareness, when we demystify these conditions, then people are more aware, they are well informed, and they know we are able to even bust the myths that come with these conditions. And we may change perceptions, we may change the attitudes, we may change the prejudices that people have against these children. So the other barrier is inadequate funding. We must appreciate that inclusive education is not cheap. We are talking about special education, bringing on board special educational teachers. We are talking about assistive technology, bringing in interventions like therapies, equipment, and therefore it is not cheap. And sometimes inadequate funding or lack of funding hinders inclusive education. And so where the goodwill might be there, but the resources to enable appropriate inclusive education may not happen if the funding is not available. Then we have inaccessible and restrictive environment. Remember, we talked about least restrictive environment. So like for learners with physical disabilities, or even those with dyslexia, if the curriculum is not accessible, we talked about modifications like speech to text, because if information is being offered in text that children cannot read, then of course that is not an accessible learning environment. But if that is converted into format, what we call accessible format that these children can access learning, then we are able to support. So if that is not done, then it hinders inclusive education. We have misconceptions on the role of special schools versus inclusive education. And I've had many teachers say, even for dyslexic kids, we are not able to manage them. So why don't we send them to special schools? So that misconception sometimes hinders inclusive education. We also have inadequate qualified personnel, because for dyslexia, as much as we even have special needs teachers, not all of them are well versed on how to teach children with dyslexia. So if they haven't gone through the training, and especially training that will also equip them on the science of reading, because that's the hallmark of dyslexia. So I have seen so many trained special education teachers who are still ill-equipped to teach learners with dyslexia, because for you to successfully teach learners with dyslexia, you have to be a reading specialist, you have to be well-versed on the science of reading, structured literacy. How do you teach learners with reading issues? So that's also another challenge. So the other challenge is restrictive and inappropriate curriculum. And the other one is lack of assistive technology. And finally, inadequate parental engagement and involvement. So if you have parents here, we cannot underscore the importance of your engagement, parents, because the teachers will do maybe 80% or 70% in school. 30% is you as a parent. And there's a lot of advocacy also that comes with parenting a child with special educational needs. So parents, it's good that you have, you also get the training and capacity building, so that you build something called parental efficacy to be able to support your child. And sometimes when this is not adequate, then it hinders inclusive education. Next slide. So next slide, we are looking at the benefits. The benefits of special education. So it helps all students reach their full potential. So if our classes are inclusive and we are adopting what we call a universal design for learning approach, it doesn't only help those with learning issues, but it helps all students reach their full potential. It creates a culture of acceptance and understanding. Remember the barriers, we talked about negative attitude. So if we promote inclusive education, then we are creating a culture of acceptance and understanding, and therefore we eliminate those attitudinal barriers that hinder inclusive education. So it builds friendships and bonds between classmates. So when we bring all these children together and we teach children the beauty of diversity, and we teach them that even children with special educational needs are not less, they're just different, and we foster that acceptance, that inclusion, then we are building friendships and bonds between these children. And so also it prepares students for life after school. So it beats logic when we isolate children into special schools, and yet we shall release them to an inclusive world, because I've not heard of special supermarkets, special markets, special churches. So we isolate them in schools, yet we send them to a world where they are supposed to, live with everybody else. Yet we don't prepare them for that. Neither do we prepare the typically developing people on how to live with people who are neurodivergent. So it's good that if it starts from the school level, then it trickles down to all other areas of life. Then we prepare everybody better for life. And finally, it benefits the whole school community. So a community that embraces inclusion for the neurodivergent or differently abled persons, because as a result, then the school definitely will have to have universal design for learning, and which ends up benefiting everybody. So when we look at inclusive education, what are the practical strategies? So the analogy here is, think of a party at your house. How do you decide what food to prepare? So you may have vegetarians, you have people with diabetes, you have people with certain allergies to food. So how do you make sure that everybody enjoys the party? I believe that you're going to be inclusive in your menu. You're going to differentiate between the different guests that you're having so that everybody enjoys the party. So the same even for a classroom. If we have teachers here, think of your dyslexic student in that class, the autistic student in that class, that one with ADHD, that one with any other difference that you need to prepare for when you're doing your lesson planning so that you're inclusive enough. So next slide. So we are looking at, so then practically, how do we make that possible? We've just looked at that picture of a party. So now when we bring it to the class setting, you have these learners with dyslexia and they are learning together with their typical learners. So how do we support them? So the way to go is universal design for learning. And we're going to look at it briefly as we are concluding our presentation. And so what is a universal design for learning? We call it UDL in short. So UDL at a glance is an approach to teaching and learning that gives all students an equal opportunity to succeed. All students. And this approach to teaching and learning offers flexibility in the ways teachers access material and show what they know. You're going to look at that in more details. And we are saying that UDL also looks for different ways to keep students motivated because, learners with dyslexia can easily lose their motivation. Next slide. Yeah, so how do we bring universal design to the classroom? So if by so doing, how do we bridge the learning gap? So as a teacher, just like that host who is thinking of their guests and thinking, how do I cook for each one of them so that they can enjoy the party? So as a teacher, you should always think UDL. When you're doing your lesson planning, right from the scheming to the lesson planning to the lesson delivery, you have to think UDL if you have to bridge the different diversity needs in your class. So let's look at that. How do you do that? So the first strategy is you have to post the lesson goals. So having goals helps students know what they are working to achieve. So the goals have to be very clear. There has to be clarity on the goals, and those goals have to be shared with the student. So, and we are saying that's why goals are always made apparent in a UDL classroom. So the learners have to know what's the goal, what are we learning today, what do we aim to achieve, how are we going to learn it, and how is it going to help me? So one example of this is you can post the goals for specific lessons in the classroom. So for each lesson, let's have the goals, and students can write down these goals. They can insert the goals in their notebooks, or the teacher may refer to lesson goals during the lesson itself. So the first thing is to make sure that the goals are very clear. So the next thing is assignment options. So how do we give the assignment? So in a traditional classroom, the only way for a student, there's only way for a student to complete an assignment, and it may be an essay or a worksheet. But with UDL, there are multiple options of students presenting or completing the assignment. So for instance, students may be able to create a podcast or a video to show what they know. So as opposed to that traditional classroom or traditional teacher who expect that every learner has to write an essay, they have to write notes for what they have learned. And now we have these dyslexics. Remember, we looked at, and that's why we looked at the symptoms of dyslexia or the challenges that come with dyslexia. So for a learner who has challenges writing, for a learner who has challenges reading, how do we expect them to be effective in maybe writing an essay or coming up with a worksheet, and yet they are not able to read? Supposing that knowledge that they have, they are allowed to demonstrate it in different ways, like they create a podcast or a video explaining what they know. That we say knowledge is knowledge, whether it is written down or said, it is still knowledge. And that's the flexibility that comes with UDL, or the accommodations that comes with UDL. And for maybe I don't know whether we have teachers or parents here who are educating their children in the international curriculum. So this is one of the accommodations. I started in my introduction saying that I'm an access arrangement assessor. And what we do once I assess and I do a report during the exams, some children may be read for, others may be written for, read for by somebody we call a reader. The answers may be written by somebody we call a scribe, or they may be allowed to use a personal computer where they turn speech into text or text into speech. So that is what we are saying, flexibility. They can even be allowed to draw a comic strip and just express what they know from what they have learned. So there are tons of possibilities for completing assignment, and as long as the student meets the lesson goals, then there should be room for flexibility. So number 3 is flexible workspaces. So UDL promotes flexibility in the learning environment. That's why in a UDL classroom, there are flexible workspaces for students. There are students maybe who work best in a corner. It's not that they have been segregated, like in those 4 images I was showing of seclusion and all that. Others may be in some sophisticated schools, you'll find that they have reading corners with even a comfortable sofa or the big bean bags, and some children just have some space where they are comfortable reading. So maybe that could be provided for. And these spaces include spaces for quite individual work, small and large group work, and group instruction. So have a variety of all that. And then depending on the preference of a student with dyslexia, where they thrive most, whether it's in individual work, small group, large group, but make sure that they are employing all the provisions so that, again, they don't always choose to work alone, then they miss out on the social aspect of working together in a group. Then if students need to tune out noise, allow them to have noise cancellation headphones during independent work. So we are moving from those traditional teachers that maybe if a child comes with headphones in class, we are very strict and we actually confiscate it. But if it's acting as an assistive technology to cancel out the noise, then please allow them. And the other one is regular feedback. And we're saying with UDL, students get feedback often every day of how they are doing. At the end of a lesson, teachers may talk with individual students about the lesson goals. So how did the child achieve the goals? So if they did not achieve the goals, how do we communicate that? And how do we help them achieve the goals in the next lesson? So students are encouraged to reflect on the choices they made in class and whatever they made, whether they met the goals. And if they didn't meet the goals, they are encouraged to think about what might have helped them to do so. So what maybe would they have done differently to be able to achieve the goal? And finally, digital and audio text, what we call assistive technology. So a UDL class should foster a technology, leverage on the power of technology. So UDL recognizes that if students can't access information, they can't learn it. So if a student cannot read, they cannot learn. So if you have notes on the blackboard or on a textbook, and the student, because the dyslexic brain cannot read and the student is not able to access that information, they definitely will not learn it. So in an UDL classroom, materials are accessible for all types of learners. So students may have many options for reading, including print for those that can read print, or digital. I've talked about speech to text or audio books. So this is always a lifesaver for dyslexics. So they will rather listen to audiobooks than to read. And once they listen, they're able to understand the context or the content, and they're able to respond. And for digital text, there are also options. So the text can be enlarged. If the font size is small, it can be enlarged. So along with choices for screen color, contrast, even the voice, do they prefer a female voice, a male voice? Do they prefer an African accent or American or European or British accent? Do they prefer to be a slow speed or fast speed? So all those are options that are available on digital text. Otherwise, if it's a textbook, it is fixed. You cannot change the text on a print format, but on a digital format, there are all those variations that are available for the student. So if it's a video, it has captions. And so for those that can read, they can read the captions, or they are also transcripts for audio. So that's how a UDL classroom looks like. And maybe let's look at the difference between the traditional classroom and the UDL, just to summarize what we have looked at. So please you're there. So on the left side of the column, we have the traditional classroom, and in the right, we have the UDL classroom. So in the traditional classroom, teaching focuses on what is taught. But in a UDL class, the focus is on both what is taught and the how. The how, because we have the brain variations. We have different brains in our class. So we have to know how each brain learns, and therefore consider how we are going to teach each of our brain in our classroom. So in a traditional classroom, accommodations are for specific students, only those with special educational needs, only those with individual needs. But in a UDL, everybody's accommodated. It is universal design for learning. And by so doing, that's why we say inclusive education benefits all students, not just those with needs. So, and that's what an UDL, because I can tell you a speech assistive technology, even if you look at, we think about phones right now or computers, are they just being used for people with needs? No, it's all of us, and it makes work easy. If it's a lift, we may think a lift is made for those with who maybe wheelchair users, for example. But even those of us who are able to walk, you're not going to walk up to 10th floor when there's a lift. So the lift helps all of us. So that's the same thing with UDL. So it accommodates all students. So what is good for a child with special educational needs becomes good for a typically developing child, and they all benefit. So in a traditional classroom, the teacher decides how the material is taught. But in a UDL class, the teacher will work with the student and decide how the student will learn the material. So you work together. The teacher's role is also to facilitate, not to dictate what needs to be done. In a traditional classroom, the classroom has a fixed setup, but in a UDL classroom, there's a flexible setup. In a traditional classroom, there's one way for a student to complete an assignment, but in a UDL class, there are multiple ways in which a student can complete assignment. And finally, grades are used to measure performance in a traditional classroom, but in a UDL classroom, grades are used to reinforce, not to measure performance, but to reinforce goals. Yeah, so next slide, please. Next, skip that one, go to the next one. Yes, very good. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. And I would have really loved to touch on a bit of remediation, the science of reading, but time is not on our side. So for now, allow me just to end with the accommodations, but maybe in future, we're going to look at remediation, so that maybe for the few remaining minutes, I've been told my time is 1 hour, 15 minutes, and you spent 1 hour, 14 minutes. So I don't know how much time we have to ask questions, but I also want to be guided by our host, how the Q&A sessions is usually conducted. So thank you very much, and back to you, our host, to moderate the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Esther. We have learned quite a lot. And we normally end our session at 9. That's why we had more people who've dropped, but we have a good number. Congratulations to all of you who are still on the call. This shows that you're very, very patient. We lost a bit of our time in the beginning, but we are grateful for the session, and I've learned quite a lot personally. So the first question, there's somebody who had asked how you identify a child with dyslexia. I think she asked in the beginning. As we continued, I don't know if you can say something quickly about this question. How do you identify a child with dyslexia?
Okay, very well. So how you identify a child with dyslexia? Of course, there are those red flags, like the symptoms I already explained. If a child is struggling to learn to read, writing, spelling, so the literacy skills are affected, and this is persistent and consistent. So those are already red flags. And therefore, once the teachers or the parents notice those red flags, so the next step is to refer that child for assessment. So for educational assessment, of course, by somebody who is qualified to assess for dyslexia. I had said I'm an assessor myself, and like currently, there's a new test that we are using called the test of dyslexia. So it's the newest dyslexia test in the market. It has 23 subtests, and it has combined different tests that were previously being used, and it tests between 3 years to 29 to 89 years of age. And it's very accurate because it gives us very accurate scores that will tell us whether a child is at risk for dyslexia, whether they did have dyslexia, and it also gives us the range from from mild to profound. Thank you.
Thank you so much. How much do you charge for this, Esther? Please, because this is of importance. We normally need assessors, and it would be nice to know how much you charge for that. Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, we have not really regulated the pricing, and therefore, for me, I am quite, so maybe first of all, just to put a disclaimer that psychometric testing is quite expensive. So like in our currency, I'm not very conversant with your currency, but okay. So just maybe to make it very affordable, I have what I call a screening. And screening, because I can see we have our Kenyan sisters and brothers here, is we charge 5,000. I don't know what's the equivalent to the Tanzanian currency, but for the comprehensive assessment, it can go as high as from 50,000 shillings and even upward. Yeah, but in my case, I always make sure that I am able to ensure that no parent is unable to access assessment. So we negotiate a price that a parent can afford. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. So that's for screening 100,000 Tanzania shillings. And for a detailed one, the 50,000 is basically 1 million. 1 million.
Oh my
Tanzania
goodness,
shillings.
that sounds so expensive. 1 million actually, here is a lot of money.
Yeah, that's 1 million. That's 1 million Tanzania shillings. But it's very affordable from experience. Because when I wanted to test my son, I was asked to give $1,000. So that's reasonable, I should say. But it's good that you can negotiate because we have different categories of people, with different capabilities, financial capabilities. Thank you so much, Esther. And yes, so there's someone who says, I'm going to read through the comments quickly. My son writes and reads backwards and turns numbers. So this is basically a comment from Rachel. I don't know if you want to say something about it. My son reads, yeah.
Backwards.
Yeah.
Yes.
My son writes and reads backwards.
Backwards, yes. So I talked about the directionality issue and the fact that some children will confuse look-alike words. So like the word so and was. So you'll find the word so being read as was, or even on and no. So maybe if the word is on, they will read backwards, start with the n, then o. So that is a typical characteristic of dyslexia. So that's why I said, as much as we are saying it's not reading backwards, I must say that I have witnessed children who read backwards, although not all. It's mostly where we have words that are look-alike. But maybe you may not find like the word table, a child reading backward. But for where we have look-alike words, that tendency to read backwards is very common.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. I think I agree with you. My son does that a lot, and it's words which look alike. I didn't know that until today. You're amazing. So I'm going to
Thank
go very
you.
quickly because time is not on our side. So Margot from Kenya says, thank you for the awesome presentation. Margot, I don't know if people in this group are in our dyslexia support group. I'm going to share Esther's number. She's amazing, as you've seen her presentation. You can contact Esther anytime for more assistance. So she says, thank you
Sure.
for the awesome presentation. You can keep conversing with Esther. You can contact her for more services. So Fatima says, very good topic. I hope more teachers turned in today. This was very helpful. I agree with you, Fatima. I wish all teachers in this world could hear this and know how to adjust their classroom setups. And by the way, when you are presenting, I discovered there's a way we group our students. The most bright students are put in category A, category B is average, and category C are struggling learners, and that's very, very bad. I wish teachers could know and then mingle them up. Even owners of schools, because I'm sure these decisions are not made single-handedly by teachers. And I'm sure teachers do this without knowing. Maybe it's out of ignorance, and that's why we need to refresh our minds. Okay, so we go to Jagriti, says, thank you for the wonderful presentation. Thank you, Jagriti. Okay. And Foster says, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Be blessed. Do we have age limits for a dyslexic child to stay in primary school? I would love you to answer this. Is there an age limit for a dyslexic child to stay in primary school, Esther?
Okay, that's a very good question. So what we advise or advocate is that we should not actually have children with dyslexia being retained in the same class if they didn't meet the benchmarks or the standards that make children promoted to the next class. It's a common practice here, or rather it was a common practice here, and especially when we had the older curriculum that we used to call 844. Our curriculum now has undergone some changes, or we have a very transformative curriculum. We are calling the CBC competence-based curriculum, although again, I'm told a month ago it changed to competence-based education. And so, unlike the international curriculum, there is no repeating, even if the child does not meet the benchmark. And that way, it allows a child with dyslexia to learn with his peers, regardless. And if we embrace inclusive education, UDL classrooms, and we are having all these modifications and the support that these children need, then there should be no issue of age, because I think the age comes when they are made to repeat and they become old. Their peers have already transitioned to secondary and they are still in primary school. So we advocate that just give social promotion, even if not on academic merit, but give social promotion so that children are learning with their peers. Once they get to secondary, I don't know how your curriculum is, but like now our new curriculum has come up with different pathways so that post-primary, once they go to secondary, they will be able to pursue pathways that are aligned to their goals, to their strengths. So we have the vocational pathways, we are going to have the STEM, that's the science and technology and mathematics pathway. There's going to be sports pathway, and so no child will get lost because they will be able to pursue what they are able to do, and we are not just limiting them to academics. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. And I should say that when children repeat, you start affecting their self-esteem.
Absolutely.
I made my son to repeat, but I regretted later, because when you leave your children to repeat, and they don't even have someone to play with, children like to associate with people of their own age. So it's a bad idea to keep letting children repeat. Okay, so we go to Mary Ndegwa. She says, thank you, Madam Esther. The presentation was very resourceful. I wish we could delve more on inclusive education in schools versus integration. That's my exact wish, Mary. Yeah, I wish we could do this, because I loved your you're saying, Esther, that there are no special markets. There are no markets for special people and other markets for typical humans. I love that. Let's keep it up. Which choice of careers would you suggest for children with dyslexia? Esther, Carol is asking you.
Okay, very well. So I've just talked about the different pathways. So if schools can provide different pathways, dyslexics are superly talented. So I have been a teacher teaching children with dyslexia for the past 20 years. And so I've had the privilege of taking through learners who were children and now they are adults. And I've seen the careers that they thrive in. I have so many who have gone into culinary arts as chefs, doing very well, working in 5-star hotels. I have others in photography and digital, just the digital space, photography, videography, now with social media. That's a space that they really thrive in. The arts, either the drawings, the painting, they also really thrive in that. ICT, that's another space they are doing very, very well. I have one of my students who just graduated, and I'm so proud of him because he's significantly dyslexic, but he has really excelled in the space of ICT, doing what do you call it? Software engineering and coding. So that's also another area that they thrive in. Among men, even sports, I have those who have gone into sports professionally and they make great sports people. So, and even entrepreneurship, there are those that are very good in business. Most of them in the tech space, businesses in the tech space, but maybe just a rider to that for those that are in business, you will find that they need support because maybe in the area of finance or where they need, and before assistive technology, where maybe they need to sign contracts or they need to read and understand maybe some stuff related to the business. So I've seen most of them will either be supported by family members, siblings or parents to run those business. But I want to say something that Richard Branson says that is so profound. We know that he's a successful entrepreneur. And he says that he leverages on his strengths to run successful businesses, but delegates his challenges to a pool of talent of employees. So like the finances and all that, he makes sure that he employs top talent to take care of his challenges. And that's also what I always advise. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. I see Margot. Thank you, Margot, for your comment. She says that my girl is dyslexic and she's doing so well as a nurse.
Oh,
so
lovely.
she has a
Yes.
girl who is also a nurse. So I don't see
Yes.
any boundaries. I don't see any limits. They are blessed and they can do
Absolutely.
anything according to their
Anything.
strength.
Very
Yeah, I
true.
love that. So assist with institutions where one can be trained to be an assessor. Tebogo is asking, which institutions can one train to be an assessor, Esther?
Okay, so maybe if I can give my case, I have trained in an institution in the UK called Real Training. They have quite a number of courses. And when it comes to assessment, actually, like for me, it's a triple accreditation or certification because you start with what they call competence in education testing, then you move to psychometric assessment, then access arrangement assessment for the exams. So that's where I trained, and especially if you want to go into psychometrics, but for those maybe who already have a degree in education, you can pursue it as you can pursue educational psychology. It also teaches how to it's educational psychology. A master's in educational psychology also teaches assessment. But if you want maybe to do it as a course, maybe a short course, because like mine took one year, you could still do the certification. In our country, unfortunately, we don't have those that offer those kind of courses, apart from maybe those now who are pursuing a master's in educational psychology. So in the certifications I have, most likely you will get them abroad. Because even my course on dyslexia, because I also have a postgraduate certificate in dyslexia, I did it from the US in an institute called Dyslexia Training Institute. Thank you.
Esther, I have someone here. Please listen to this. It's a long message somehow. What makes a dyslexic child change his challenges in some other days? Example, my child is 11 years with dyslexia, but I have noticed some days like doing homework and it's easy, he understands, he's engaged. But some days, which is almost 70% of the times, it's hard to understand and forgets even what's 1 + 1. And his daily program is the same, but some days it's too easy. So in short, some days are hard, some days are simple, some days are easy. So what makes that person behave like that?
Okay, so I think the inconsistency depends, because from what I have heard her say, when the days where things are easy, maybe even what they are learning is easy and they have already mastered it. But for dyslexic, learning new things or things that the brain has challenges understanding or processing, definitely it will cause that child to have a hard time. And so dyslexics will oscillate between good days and bad days, depending on what they are learning and the challenges the brain is having to learn that. So, and that is why it is important that apart from just even accommodating and remediating on the academics, even the mental health state of the child is very, very, mental health support for the child, because sometimes it's not easy when you're not succeeding. And there's something we call learned hopelessness. So it looks like for this child, most of the time, and the parents say 70%, is that the child is experiencing that phenomena we call learned hopelessness. And this is an experience where when you have failed something over a long period of time, consistently and persistently, you tend to give up. And sometimes that's how dyslexics are wired, because maybe what is the first experience, which becomes their default, is that learning is hard, the stuff is hard, and even if I try, I will fail. So I would rather maybe not exert myself, because I don't want to experience that failure. And therefore, things become a bit hard. So it's good to keep encouraging them and to ensure that they don't slide into that learned hopelessness, because it can really hinder learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. I have Lucy Waitherero. She says, I and my 2 boys are dyslexic. One just finished his software engineering course in a top institution. Dyslexics thrive in IT. And the same Lucy is saying what causes that boy to behave like that is called sensory overload. Oh my goodness, this is a big term. What is this in English? Sensory overload.
Okay, can I explain that?
Yes, yes.
Yes, so sometimes, okay, sensory overload is more common with children with autism, but even for some dyslexic, it can be common. So sensory overload is where the sensory input, okay, let me maybe say it in English. So we know about the sensory organs, the hearing, the ears, the senses, what we call the 5 common sense: hearing, seeing, touching. So all those senses are sent to the brain from the different sensory organs. So the visual, the eyes do the visual, the ears do the hearing, the skin does the touch or the feeling. So what happens is that for neurodivergent autism, and to some extent dyslexic and even ADHD, all those senses, when they are received by the brain, for a normal brain, the brain is supposed to regulate those senses and without overwhelming somebody. Like I could be hearing a lot of noises, I could be seeing many things, I could be touching, I could be experiencing all these things being sent to my brain by the different sensory, what you call sensory input, by the different senses organs, but my brain is able to regulate that, and it does not overwhelm me, it doesn't bother me, and life goes on as usual. But for the neurodivergent, all that sensory input sometimes becomes very overwhelming. And so they tend to go into something called a sensory meltdown, because the brain is so overwhelmed, it's under so much pressure. And if maybe that child doesn't take a break, or they don't, if they don't do something to relieve that pressure that is coming in through their brain, then they may go into a sensory overload that may make them shut down, and they are not able to perform either in class or at work. So basically, I think in lay terms, that is what sensory overload is all about. Yes, and it's common. It's also another cause of maybe learning failure, but in most cases for dyslexics, it's more of the learned hopelessness than the sensory overload. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. I am putting Esther's number in the group, but she's also in our support group. I've put her number in the chat, but she's also in our support group. Feel free to contact Esther directly. Feel free to join our support group. Rosaline, thank you. We have another very experienced person in our platform. She has shared a link where you can do a course. I think this is a British Dyslexia Association offering this course, and it costs 4,050 euros. And it's an e-platform. Rosaline, would you like to say something? Welcome, and you need to have a session with us one of these days. She's from Africa Dyslexia Organization. Rosaline Karibu, welcome.
Thank you so much, my sisters. It's good to see you all. Hi, Esther. I'm waiting for you in Ghana. Please tell me you've got the ticket. and come with yeah, come with Candace. But hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the great job you're doing for Tanzania and everybody. This is so. I was very happy when I was reading the comments of the person who said the child it did IT and all that, and I'm so grateful to you, Mom. I am a dyslexic, so I understand what it takes to get your child to that level, and I'm really excited. I can't wait to hang out with you all here. So we'll fix a date and I'll be here. I just want to say hello.
Thank you, Rosaline.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to say a few last, I'm so proud of everyone who is here. I see we're 18 of us. I cannot believe it. This is very nice and encouraging. So Esther, we are going to bring you on board again to do the session on the science of reading. Imagine you're right here in Kenya and I was getting someone to do it for me from the US. Because of the time difference, sometimes I could have a conference. I'm teaching, and of course, I'm giving workshops to teachers like we do in Dyslexia Tanzania. But I had to connect this person on Zoom, and due to the time difference, sometimes she was not available. And you're right here in Kenya, and you're able to do structured literacy, the science of reading. Of course, I've studied it, but I want to hear it from the best, from the experts. I'm not an educator, so I liked it when it's done by the best person, and I feel like you have what it takes. So I'm going to organize another session for you, Esther, so that you can teach us the science of reading. It's helped me so much. I know I've attended many sessions, but I can never be as good as an expert like yourself, because I'm just a parent with a son who has dyslexia. And I really learn every time I'm in a session with people like you who know what they're doing. Another thing, I'm just so grateful to you, Esther. Thank you so much, Rosaline. Thank you so much for joining. You're the best gift I had this evening. Thank you so much. And I'm going to organize something with you one of these days. Thank you, everyone, for being so kind to be here with us. And have a good night. Stay tuned for our session next week.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you. Lucy, you're saying, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Rosaline.
Lucy, I can see you did a course for only $30.
Yeah, on an online platform. It was very enlightening. You could try it just for your own knowledge.
Wow, this is good. And
Yeah.
by the way, for your information, Lucy, it's good you said this. We collaborate with Wilson Institute. I don't know if this is the same as Allison. Wilson Institute of Language in the
It's
US.
different.
It's different, right?
This one is an online platform on Play Store.
Oh, nice, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Lucy, next
It's,
time we should also hear more from you. Today you've been a bit on the text. Next time you're being
No.
inclusive and talking more.
I respect
Yeah.
Esther. She's just awesome. So I wanted to give her a chance to all of you to feel her out. She's the best here.
Oh, and we felt her. Esther, you're so blessed. Thank you, girl,
Thank you.
for what you've
Thank you,
done.
my dear. And maybe just allow me to let our listeners and our viewers to know that we are organizing a dyslexia conference in the month of August. It's on 20th and 21st here in Nairobi, Kenya. We are calling it Dyslexia Rising Africa Conference, and the theme is rewriting the neurodiversity narrative from stigma to strength. And you are all very, very much welcome. We are currently working on the poster. I have my good friend Lucy and Phyllis from Dyslexia Organization. We have a team of 10 dyslexia experts coming from the US. We have Made by Dyslexia that will be joining us online. And we have our host from Tanzania. We believe that you have no choice, my dear. I would
I'm
rather host
coming.
you in my house.
I am coming.
Yes, and we also have Rosalind, and we are doing Rosalind's conference first on the 13th and 14th in Ghana. Then we all come to Kenya and hold the Kenyan one on 20th and 21st. And we are hoping that because it's the inaugural conference for both Ghana and Kenya, so we are hoping that next year will be now, let me use a wrong word, threesome, Ghana, Tanzania, and Kenya. So,
And I'm here thinking I should go to Ghana as well.
Please join us. The more, the merrier.
Now, Esther, you need to advertise this more when we have more people. We had about 28 people, and now I see we've dropped it to 12. We will we will make this announcement every time we meet.
Sure. And I'll share with you the posters that you can also circulate in your network.
Yes, please. Yeah.
We look forward to having more of our brothers and sisters from Tanzania joining us.
For sure. We will start marketing this because it's very important to us as well. And we will definitely support it. Share more details. I wish we said this when we had more people because we had very good attendance today. But we still have another session next week, a very interesting session again next week. And we are scheduling you for another session.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. God bless and good night, everyone.
Bless you. Good night, people.
Good night. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dyslexia Tanzania.
Welcome. Thank you.